Imagine the character now looking at yourself, the writer, in the other chair next to you. What does she think of you?
What is acting for writers?
So, acting for writers, in my book, The Three Wells of Screenwriting, I have a chapter called Acting for Writers. And it came about because I found that there's something that's very difficult to teach writers, which is how to make their characters real and actually perform and behave in ways that's real as a real person would. And what I found is when an actor inhabits a character, sometimes they'll say things like, they'll say, well, my character wouldn't do that. And I'm like, yes, why not? Tell me. A lot of writers or people will say like, well, because I said so in the script. But I'm like, no, the actor is actually living the character and they're being the character and they're actually inhabiting the character in a way that is maybe even more than you could in your brain when you were writing, if you are the kind of writer who doesn't know how to sort of project yourself into your character. So acting for writers came from this idea that actors, when they do something, when they inhabit the character, whatever that magic is that they do when they become the character, they do something that's not dissimilar to when writers imagine themselves into a character. There's something going on there that's a similar thing. And so my chapter, Acting for Writers, sort of came out of that. And it's also really important because actors carry the emotional weight of a film. They are the emotion. When we watch a film, we feel what they feel. And that's incredible. So to avoid creating sort of wooden characters that are sort of one-dimensional characters in a way. It's difficult as an actor if you get a script that's like, I have to make this work somehow. You do so much work. And what I was trying to do is almost help writers to create characters that are more well-rounded, that are easy for actors to inhabit. So that's kind of what Acting for Writers is. And I would encourage writers to actually do an acting course, like even a small one, and just go and feel what it feels like to be these things that you're creating on the page, because it's very easy to just say, well, he walks across the room, and you're like, well, why am I walking across the room? And, well, because I've told you to. No, you need a little bit more than that. Yeah, so.
Well, Angelique, you are a writer as well as an actor. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Which came first?
Acting, very much so, yes. Writing came more out of necessity, and now I'm so grateful for that blessing. And I love it equally. I can't differentiate my love.
Wonderful. Well, let's see the two of you. We don't know what's in store, so we're going to be pleasantly surprised just as the audience is.
Great. Yeah, and Ange, I've just read a script of Ange. It's fantastic. So this is a bit of a sidetrack, but sometimes when actors write scripts, it goes both ways. So sometimes when writers write scripts that are bad for actors, sometimes actors, when I've read some scripts by actors and I'm like, oh, they're not going to understand its words on the page that are important. They're going to do something. Sometimes I've just had this experience where the sitcom that I was writing for, sometimes the actors would try and write episodes and they were always like problematic but Ange created the script that was just, she understood the words on the page, and I was really relieved to see that. I was like, okay, it goes both ways. I think sometimes,
yeah, if I may add to that, I think Matthew mentioned the emotional life of a character, but I think as actors, our job is interpretive art. We have to make these words come alive, not just emotionally, but thought-wise and action-wise and impulse-wise. And from that perspective, it's not just the emotional life of the character, but the motivation I find. With my writing partner, when we write, he's always really good with, well, we're both good with reasoning, but we have our different strengths, and like he would know what type of weapon to use in what situation, or what car was used in what year. But when it comes to motivation and character arc, my logic is really strong, my reasoning, because that's exactly what we do. We have to somehow make these words sing, and then it's almost like you invert that the other way around, where you have to write the words that come from, something that will eventually become the performance.
Yeah, and actors have these you talk about motivation, so that's like a sort of an acting term, is, what's my motivation in the scene? But then they have things like scene goals and objectives within the scene, and like each scene is broken down into these like mini parts, and you have to live them all, and you were talking about the thoughts behind your brain that's happening for the character in the moment. And I think sometimes writers, when they just sounded like, oh, I'm just picturing a scene where some guy, you know, drives a car through a thing and shoots someone or whatever, they're not thinking about all those acting terms. And I think it's vital.
Yeah, and the arc of not just the story, but each character, especially the protagonist, you know, obviously your typical hero's journey and that kind of thing.
And then the scene art as well. Within the scene, there's a scene arc.
Yes, yes, exactly, the scene arc. And I think another advantage that actors have is we've been on so many sets, ideally. And in that way, we've seen how certain scripts transform, obviously with all the other factors as well, the production design and directing and camera work and all that, but ultimately we get to see the whole process of what it's like to shoot all these different scenes, put them together, see the final product, and we also get to read a heck of a lot of scripts and sometimes just scenes for auditions, and honestly most of them are really bad, well, depending on, you know, what kind of level you're at. But it's actually more frequent that you read things that don't quite work, and that can be as useful to kind of think, well, why am I not resonating with this material, and what would I have done differently? And I think the more and more you get exposed to that type of material, rather than only reading your fancy A-lister scripts, which you think is unattainable. So that's another thing that I think is beneficial as an actor.
I'm so glad you mentioned that about the actors being on set and seeing how a script is translated, because I find a lot of the time when first-time writers try and write a script, they've never been on set, and there's actually a big there's a big learning that happens when you're seeing the thing being translated into the thing that it actually will be one day on the screen, right? If you've been on set, I mean, I worked as an extra on a set, just a random small, I mean, I was like a background extra, but I was watching and watching and watching and seeing how this thing is translated, because one of the other errors that writers often do is they will write something that's actually almost impossible to turn into a thing because they don't know what it's like. And I think your thing about actors being on set and seeing that is really important. And then also actors reading scripts. Most people don't read scripts. Most writers actually don't. Most first-time screenwriters will have read novels, but they very rarely read screenplays. And I actually find actors do read a lot more screenplays. So yeah, good point.
Yeah, by default. And also regarding what you just said about how writers sometimes don't get to experience the actual practicality of their words. I think, you know, with changes that have been made with budget cuts, a lot of writers' room have gotten so small and short that they don't often get to actually write during the production phase. So I've heard of shows where literally the writers will not have been to set once. They don't get to see what they're writing for. And it shows when you watch the show, because you have to know what the space is like. You have to understand how many people can fit in here, what's practical in terms of everything and anything, you know, the weather, you know, just the amount of people. So it's so important to physically, the two go hand in hand. And also I want to say, when you want to produce your stuff on top of that, it's so useful to have the experience of being on set, because you know how to write for whatever budget you have in mind as well. So that's really useful.
Exactly.
You're not going to put 1,000 extras in if you can't afford it, or use the fancy location that's going to be so expensive.
Yeah, I think in a way it can all be summed up to embodying the character and embodying the moment on the screen, right? So you're writing something and then there it is. And so what I'd like to try with us is a exercise that comes from my book, which is called Becoming the Character. And it's about how you can do a small acting technique. I mean, this is an exercise that comes from the acting world to sort of at least be your character for a moment. And so what we're going to experiment with today is Ange has a character from a story that she's created. We're not going to speak too much about the story necessarily, and I think, as far as I understand, it's quite a raw story, which is the perfect moment, because the best moment for this thing to work is when you are in the development phase and you're not sure about who your character is, because characters are elusive beasts to lock down as a writer. You know, when we first picture them, they're a little bit like an abstract painting, and then they look like weird, like they got a face and a nose and an eye. But the more we spend time with them, they eventually become like a beautiful oil painting, and we know who they are. And part of the way of becoming to know one's character, one of the things that could be useful is doing this exercise that we're going to do now.
I like that. They become more pixelated and more defined.
Exactly.
The closer you get, the more you develop them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So should we just jump into it?
Yeah, let's do
Let's
it.
do.
Cool.
Yeah,
Okay,
excited
cool.
to see.
Okay.
So I'm going to just stand off screen. She's going to eventually
Perfect.
sit in that chair to become a character. So she'll be looking at the chair occasionally. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Okay.
And you want me to keep my eyes open?
No, I'll tell you when
You'll
to
tell
open
me.
them and
You'll
when to
tell
close
me.
them.
Perfect,
Yeah.
perfect.
Cool. Okay. You ready?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so Ange, if you could just, actually before, I'm going to start this again. Okay, so for those of you watching the video, you can actually watch this right now, but you could re-watch this and just do this exercise on your own, in your own space, just using me as a guide while I talk Ange through the process. So Ange, if you could begin just by closing your eyes and just relaxing your body as much as you can. Just let go of any tension that you might be feeling. Just feel the energy draining out of your body in a relaxing way. Get as centered as you can and as relaxed as you can, as much as you can. Just take a big breath in and out. Perfect. And just keep relaxed and try and keep focused as much as you can. Keep your eyes closed. Think about that character that you have in whatever form they are in your mind at the moment. And then I want you to turn your head and look at the chair next to you. Keep your eyes closed now, but turn your head towards the chair next to you. And when you open your eyes, I want you to picture your character sitting in that chair. And just keep your eyes on the chair. You can open them. Just look at the chair and picture what they look like. Use your imagination. How are they sitting in the chair? Just keep that in your mind. What are they wearing? Are they carrying tension in their body anywhere? What are you feeling about them when you're seeing them there? Are you judging them in any way? Just keep these thoughts in your head and we'll unpack afterwards. Do they have any props with them that they're carrying? Do they have anything at all, like a special wardrobe item? Just use your imagination. If nothing comes to you, that's also fine. And then when you're ready, I want you to go and sit in that chair and sit like the character sits. Become the character in that space. Perfect, good. And keep looking at the chair next to you when you can. Amazing, that's fantastic. Good. Feel what it feels like to be this character in her body. Are you holding any tension anywhere in the body as this character? Monitor your thoughts as this character. What are you thinking? What's the utmost thought in your brain? And as this character, what do you want? And if you like, you can picture your character in a space, whatever it is. Is there anything around you? Any objects? Any environment at all? Good. And keep the focus, keep being this character, and imagine the character now looking at yourself, the writer, in the other chair next to you. What does she think of you? How does she feel about you, the writer? Great, and then let go of that and just become the character again. Just stay in that moment, stay as you are. You can forget about the person next to you. And when you're ready, you can go sit back in your chair and just As you're back in the chair, that's perfect. Just let go of the character. Just do a body shake. There we go. Let go of the character. Perfect. Good. That is it. That is the exercise. And I'll go join you now and ask you some more questions about it.
Great.
Good job.
Thank you.
That was amazing. It was great. You totally became someone different there. Oh my gosh. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, I don't know if you're rolling, but anyway. Okay. So thanks so much for that, Angie.
Of course. Thank you.
You were so,
for the experience.
you were so fantastic. So I've done this exercise a few times in environments that are not exactly like this. This is very different with the lights and everything in an interview environment. But I wanted to share it with everyone because every time I've done this, even with writers who are not actors, it's incredible to me. When they sit in the chair, their body posture changes and something about their performance as the character is actually very real. And I could see that when you sat down here. So normally what happens is after this moment as a writer, if you're sitting at home and you're doing this at home, you can just jot down notes about the character that you've discovered. And I normally encourage people immediately afterwards, straight afterwards, go and make some notes because you may have discovered a little funny thing, interesting. And even if it's a tiny little thing, it could become one more of those pixels you said, like in creating the character that's becoming more real. So I just wanted to ask, Ange, what was it like for you when you sat in the character's chair? What did you feel?
Well, I approached her from the beginning of the inception of basically my story. So that's before she's really grown much or figured much out in terms of, the short space of time that we spend with her. And I definitely felt more tension in my body. I felt uncomfortably different by societal standards. And a little lonely, I think, like that kind of sense of not feeling connected to my surroundings.
Yeah. And what did you feel like when you saw the character? Could you sort of picture the character? I mean, I know you mentioned,
I felt sorry for her, and I didn't actually, when I started off writing her, I didn't see her as a character who needed to be pitied, but watching her, I kind of just wanted to give her a hug.
Oh, that's quite beautiful.
Yeah, definitely.
And did you see what she was wearing at all? Could you see a wardrobe, or was that? I mean, you don't have to because sometimes that's very difficult. But could you see something?
I did. She was definitely more fashion forward than me, but very comfortable. I saw her wearing like a colorful onesie and like big kind of interesting slippers because I kind of pictured her in her home environment, even though she felt uncomfortable. Often, at home is when you think, when you're on your own, you think the most and you end up in your head. So
fascinating. And were there any props when I said that? I mean, you don't have to necessarily, but sometimes it's, I guess the little slippers are like, that sounds like a prop.
I didn't really picture props.
It doesn't always happen. Sometimes it's, some characters will have like a pin protector or a Zippo light or something like that, and then that'll come to you at that point necessarily. And then when you became her and I asked you about if she had a goal or a want, did anything come to you in that moment?
I think a desire for acceptance and companionship.
Wow.
And also I wanted to add when you said, what does she see around her? I imagined her looking over the ocean and actually feeling quite unsettled rather than comforted by that, if she weren't, at home, based on her own phobias and things,
And then what did she think of you?
Well, she actually quite liked me.
That's good.
Well, I mean, I guess the character is age-wise kind of similar to me.
Okay.
I think I looking at myself in the seat, I imagined that we could be friends, even though I think I would have perceived, the character would have perceived me as perhaps being a little bit more together than she is, which is not necessarily the case at all. But, so
okay,
that,
cool.
I think was
Fascinating. Okay, great. Were there any other surprises or things that you discovered? I mean, you've just said so much, which for me has made the character come alive in a way that is not necessarily like, okay, she's this age and she comes from this place, but just by talking about her already, this is the thing, is just by doing this exercise, you kind of, suddenly the character feels like there's someone here, there's like a presence or a character here, but with it, just as a matter of interest, was there anything that you felt doing it that was interesting? Or?
Yes, I will say that I hadn't actually pinpointed the feeling of not fitting in and the loneliness as being quite such a factor. So probably I'd want to focus on that theme a little bit more going forward, because I have the story, basically, you know, I've been working on the first draft, but I address it, but not exactly the way I think I could and should. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good job. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
That's it. You see, the thing is, we find very often in this exercise, we'll find that thing, and it's very often the theme or the thread, and we're like, oh, it's a thing I need to work in here because it's the core of the character.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is linked up to the emotional arc you were mentioning,
Exactly,
right? And that's
exactly.
the thing that we discover with this kind of an exercise, because we become the character in the moment. And that's what an actor will do when they're given a script, and then they'll realize, oh, well, what's the arc, and you kind of have to work hard to create it in a story that's pretty bad. You know what I mean? You have to kind of like work hard. But if you can do this kind of assignment. Anyway, this exercise is something that I just really wanted to share, because as you can see, I get very excited about doing this kind of work. And this is the kind of work that I think a writer can do at home, even alone. You can just need 2 chairs, and you can just sit there, become the character for a moment, feel the character. And then it's very important to let go. Like, I mean, I know that Andrew's, you know, a professional actor, so you knew how to just shake out the character, but it is important to lose the character as well. You don't want to merge. That moment is very important. If you do this at home, make sure that you shake off the character and get rid of it, because otherwise you want to have that distinction. But yeah, I hope that's useful for you, and was maybe something that people can do at home. You can also extend this. Ange pictured her in the bedroom, which is actually great, because you can do this for your location. So you can actually then become your character in your different locations, look around the room and see what you see, and you might see a window, and there might be something beyond the window, and you might actually make discoveries of your locations. So in the book, there's another exercise about locations where you can actually inhabit your character in different locations and use your senses and your imagination to imagine what it sounds like and looks like and feels like. And then you become a real embodiment of the character on the screen. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea of having multiple chairs for the different characters that you embody. And
Andrew was actually mentioning earlier about how, you know, we're in an interview situation, so we're quite stagnant. But actually what's even better is walking and moving. You were talking about movement, right?
Yeah.
Like how we can't do it right now, but, you know, if you can walk like your character or move around the room, then it's like a whole other exploration. And that's all, I mean, all fun acting stuff. So,
yeah,
you know,
exactly.